Welcome to the Public Affairs program of KNAT TV, Joy in Our Town. My name is Mike Cosgrove. I have the privilege of being your host today. And joining me in the studio, we have Jennifer Metzler. She's the Executive Director for the Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless program. Jennifer, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
This is such an important issue. And certainly we're not going to be able to cover all the ins and outs in this short amount of time that we have today, but there's so much that I feel our viewers need to know about what's going on with the homeless and all that issue. So again, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome.
What is the official definition of homelessness?
That's a great question. For us at Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless, we'll see anyone who is experiencing homelessness in the broadest sense. So we can define that as sleeping rough, out on the streets, in a camp, in a car, people that are in a shelter. For us, someone who's been recently housed in transitional or permanent housing, we'll see them for 2 years. We'll follow them with our services just to make sure that they're in sustained housing and they're not likely to come back to us. We also will see people who are doubled up or teens that are couch surfing and going from place to place. So anyone that doesn't have a safe, sustainable, adequate, affordable housing place that they can stay in where they know that tomorrow night they're going to be able to be there with a roof over their heads. There's some confusion because some funding streams from public entities such as the federal government use differing definitions. And so sometimes some organizations will follow a stricter one. We have multiple funding streams so that we're diversified enough that we can stick to our mission, serve those that we know need our care, and then sort out the funding afterwards.
It's amazing the diversity of your answer, because most people just think it's somebody out on the street, but it's more than that.
Right. And the people that we see on the street, that's sort of tip of the iceberg. Many people that are experiencing homelessness might not define it as homelessness. They just think they're having a rough time and they're staying with family and then they're in the shelter. It's very episodic. Some people experience homelessness for a day or 2 days or that week till they get the first month's deposit on a new place. And some, what they call chronically, for many, many years are on the streets and surviving, very resourceful to be able to survive that long.
Very much so. Now, you had mentioned the different types of homelessness. One of them that came to mind, you had mentioned the couch surfing by young people just staying there. Is that one of the larger issues? Do you see that quite a bit with young people?
We see that with young people, that staying in what they call squats.
Oh, okay.
So in abandoned buildings. And with youth, they're difficult to reach because they're isolated and on the streets experiencing homelessness for really good reasons. They're also adolescents, so they're experiencing everything adolescents do. They're not in the more conventional places. They don't hang out necessarily where adults go in a more kind of traditional sense of how we think about homelessness, so they're not at the conventional meal sites necessarily or consistently, and they're very homelessness itself is an experience of isolation.
Yes.
By the time homelessness is underneath the safety net, is what we say. People have exhausted all their resources by the time they get to this experience. And for youth, with everything around adolescence on top of that, and the need to be independent and identity, really make it difficult to find them, reach them, connect with them, build the trust.
Wow. Now, when and how was the Healthcare for the Homeless program created? It's
a really great story. And it shows a lot about this community and communities nationwide and their response and compassion and concern for this phenomenon of homelessness. It's also a sad narrative for us at some level because it's a 30-year-old narrative. We were established in 1985 across the country because of the economy and a divestment in affordable housing, as well as people released from the old school mental institutions without any behavioral health community-based options. People often think that's the main cause of homelessness, but it's really just a piece of it. It was the economy. It was people not being able to compete with their income for housing in the housing market. So we're seeing more and more people here in Albuquerque and across the country, as it turned out, landing in emergency departments with health needs. And providers were realizing you can't just patch them up and send them home. You can't send them to the pharmacy to get their meds and then tell them what to eat with that medication and tell them to put their feet up and rest if they have an injury. So the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and Pew Memorial Trust did a demonstration grant and awarded grants to 19 cities for 4 years. Albuquerque was one of those cities. It was a broad community coalition of medical providers and activists and faith community members churches were seeing people coming in their door in need in a different way, saying, how can we do this? So we went out in a little silver bullet, little trailer, to the parking lots of the shelters with just a couple staff, a part-time medical provider and social worker, to figure out how do we really address this. And we learned a lot in the cities across the country that were also granted this award, shared information. So after 4 years, when the federal government passed the Stuart B. McKinney Act to address homelessness, they had Housing and Urban Development do some housing programs. They had Education do some education programs that exist to this day for homeless children. And they had Health and Human Services do a healthcare for the homeless stream. And they said, how do we do this? How should we structure this program? And we were able to say from the grassroots, we've learned something. And what you need to do is go find people. They can't come find you. So we do outreach to the camps, meal sites, motels, shelters. We need to accompany people. They're not navigating resources and systems well. And so they need case management and care coordination and social work. We can't be an empire. One organization won't solve this issue, so we need to work with others in very formal ways to change the system to know how to care for people without homes. And we need to change the world. So we need to continue to do advocacy and education of our decision makers. And that is the healthcare for the homeless model that we implement to this day.
Wow, what a holistic look at everything.
It's
It really is. There's so many different factors. And I know that you mentioned that a couple times, but as just an observer here on the outside, I was not aware that there's so much that's going on.
We are a sophisticated organization. We've learned to do this well because we have to. What we've learned are two things. We create homelessness as a community. We can end it. So we work for that day. We work to end homelessness and house people. And we believe it can happen. In the meantime, if we need to provide care in this way, exclusively and sort of separately for people, we'll do it really well. And what we've learned through that model is that it's a good model of healthcare for anyone. And I think recent changes in the healthcare environment about affordability, about comprehensiveness, about integrated care and parity with behavioral health and primary care and medical health. I think, and hospital systems and community-based outpatient settings, I think we've learned a lot about what people need to be healthy and to get their needs met. And I think that the whole system can learn from the model that we've created.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, what is the relationship, they're combined, what is the relationship between health, housing, and homelessness?
Homelessness is about lack of housing. There are many, many reasons people become homeless. Some people have in common. The group of people that experience homelessness during any given year is very diverse. Some populations and people with certain vulnerabilities, whether it's a disability, whether it's having experienced violence in the home, whether it's being a person of color, experience poverty and the extreme poverty of homelessness really disproportionately. It's very much about not being able to compete for housing because housing isn't affordable. We think of three pillars, structural pillars that create homelessness. Housing affordability, income, whether you're disabled and get disability income or whether you work. 44% of homeless adults in the country, I believe, actually work. When people say, why can't they work? We say they do.
They do.
And then really going bankrupt from not being able to afford health care and medical care. So if you have a medical issue, it just makes you that much more vulnerable to, again, falling through the safety net, falling through those structural issues and systems and landing on the streets. So we can't disconnect them.
No, you can't. That's all together, obviously. Where can individuals experiencing homelessness, where can they go to obtain these health care services?
Sure. They can come to us. Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless has a consolidated health campus at First and Mountain Northwest, just north of downtown. It's right on the Mountain Road bus line. And we certainly will figure out what we can do for someone and help to facilitate access to other resources. For example, we don't do inpatient, obviously, care. We work with many other healthcare providers. We can enroll people for Medicaid and other benefits, food stamps, whatever they need. We can help them to access housing. Always we try to help people find housing, and we have a housing specialist who facilitates that. And we're actually expanding. We have a grant from the federal government. It's paid. Our building's paid for. We're adding 8,300 square feet. We're doing construction right now. We should have a ribbon cutting to open those doors at some point in August, and we'll be able to serve more people.
Wow, what a blessing that's going to be to the community.
We're very excited. I have a hard hat. I'm very
That's excellent.
Watch the progress every day.
And a lot of times people just don't know where to start. You know, they're having health issues and everything, so this is helpful to have a point of contact to be able to start with.
People can also enter First Nations. First Nations up on Zuni in the southeastern part of the city, they also serve people who are experiencing homelessness and do that very well.
Good.
They're a great partner.
The more the better, obviously. Are there healthcare services that are available specifically for homeless youth? Different dynamic, different demographic when you're talking about the younger people.
There are certain restrictions on being able to provide care to youth that are legal and statutory. Those in New Mexico, and just it's about whether they're emancipated, it's about consent from guardians and parents, it's about their legal status.
I see.
And many of the youth who have gone to the streets for whatever reason haven't gone through the process of emancipating, and they're often alienated from their parents or the adults who take care of them in their lives, part of their circumstances and how they got there. There have been improvements in and refinements in the law over recent years for us to be able to provide more care to them, particularly when they need it. So there are some limitations, but there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot that we can do to get them engaged, and certainly anytime anyone's having an emergent need, an emergency, then the healthcare system will care for them.
Well, you know, I'm worried about anybody in any of these difficult situations, of course, but the young people especially, because there are some guidelines and there's some more restrictions, and that makes things difficult sometimes for them as well as for the providers that want to take care of them.
There's an organization called Pegasus, which very much understands this law and advocates for youth. So we work with them closely to understand it. They're fabulous advocates. They're here in town and known, very well respected, a great resource. And that's a place where youth can enter, and they will advocate for them. They're there for the youth.
Wonderful.
So even when we talk to them and say as an organization or as adults, you know, they're always very clear that their lens and their first commitment is to making sure that those kids are taken care of.
Fantastic, fantastic. What types of housing and health services are there for veterans? I'm a veteran. My boys are all veterans, and I know that there's a real issue in this community about that, but how are we approaching that demographic?
I think there have been great advances in the last several years. The National Federal Interagency Council on Homelessness has come up with a goal to end veteran homelessness this year or next. You know, sometimes those goals shift a little bit timing-wise, but it's a very aggressive goal, and it's been reflected in how resources at the federal, state, and local level are being used and targeted on vets right now. The VA here in Albuquerque has vast resources. They created a veterans outreach team about 10 or more years ago now as part of the federal VA's program, and they came to us and asked if they could connect with us, do outreach with us, provide care, and connect down at our campus. We had just built one of our new buildings at the time, and we said, you can have space. So they come down 3 days a week, and they work side by side with our providers. Veterans who were homeless were coming to us years ago, loved the care we were providing. We could refer them to the VA. There were services and resources to which they were very much entitled that they weren't receiving because they wouldn't make it up to Gibson. That was a long way to go.
Yeah.
This has allowed us to enroll, we stopped counting at about 6,000 veterans and their families who were eligible, not enrolled in VA services, and they get them right, they came in with laptops and cell phones, they set up right there, they're an interdisciplinary team, and they make that work. They now do their own outreach, so we've just expanded outreach capacity in the community. There are now housing vouchers, they're called VASH vouchers, which are available for vets. A lot more resources up at Gibson, and the vets are getting there. There's also the Albuquerque Heading Home initiative that has been a city and nonprofit community-based initiative the last several years, which we participate in, has also really focused on veterans, acknowledging that, and put some resources to that, and they're getting them housed. I talked to one of their directors yesterday, and she said Heading Home has an 82% retention rate in housing for all of its participants, which is consistent with the data. We love data because it demonstrates that we're using our resources for real impact. And 82% retention rate after a year in housing. So we've learned housing is key, and wrapping people with support is what keeps them housed. People don't need to establish that they're ready for housing or prove that they're good enough for housing. Or they're homeless, they need housing, and then we need to support them. We've really shifted our thinking, and we now have the data here locally to show that that's the case.
Well, I'll tell you, Jennifer, unfortunately we're out of time, but this is such an important issue, and I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here and for taking care of the community. That demographic of this community is just so vital to help those folks out as much as we can. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I love my job, and it's a pleasure to talk about the work we do.
And it's obvious you do enjoy it very much, and thank you for all you do. For those of you joining us watching today, thank you for being part of Join Our Town. My name is Mike Cosgrove. Have a blessed day. Welcome to the public affairs program of KNAT TV, Joy in Our Town. My name is Mike Cosgrove. It's an honor to have you with us today. Joining me in the studio, we have Don Harris. He's the city councilor for the city of Albuquerque. Don, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Well, I was looking at the questions over that we had talked about, and the first one, I think we could talk about 3 hours about that, but we'll try to keep it shorter. What are the duties of the city councilman?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. And actually, I'm not the city councilor for Albuquerque. I'm city councilor for 1/9 of Albuquerque.
Oh, for 1/9, okay,
Yeah,
for the district.
Yeah, for district. And I happen to be District 9, the last numbered district. What the city council does is we're the legislative body of the city of Albuquerque. What I'd like to explain to people is that in the federal government, you have the Congress, and you have the courts, and you have the president. In the state legislature, in the state of Mexico, rather, you have the governor, you have the legislature, and you have the state courts. In the city of Albuquerque, we also have the 3 branches of government, except we use the state courts, but we have the mayor is the chief executive, the same function as the governor or the president, and then a city council, 9 of us, we're the same function as a legislator or Congress with regard to the city. And the only difference within the city of Albuquerque is we have hearing officers, or we use the state court system for our 3rd branch of government. So it's kind of a microcosm of the rest of the 3 branches, checks and balances of the government. We appropriate money and we do land use. Those are the things that we really do when we pass ordinances. Some of the ordinances that we pass that affect people's lives, for instance, City of Albuquerque was on the forefront of passing an ordinance that prohibited people talking on their cell phones while they were driving. We've passed ordinances which require cell phone towers to try to integrate into the community so that we don't have these huge towers anymore. We've noticed that those sorts of towers haven't been built recently. That's because of the city council.
Absolutely.
So those are the sorts of things we do that impact people's lives. That's it in a nutshell. We also have food inspectors which keep restaurants, make sure that you're safe when you go out to eat and things like that.
Public safety is a big part of everything you do.
Especially municipal government. As one of the former mayors used to say, when people call 911, they don't get Obama, they don't get Governor Martinez, they get the city of Albuquerque.
That's right.
And it's really very important to people. And the city, I think, has a pretty good reputation among the public because we take care of your basic needs. We keep your streets paved, we remove the snow, we get your trash. We send police officers to your door and firefighters to your door when you call 911. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
You know, things that we just take for granted. The average person that's out there, hey, the garbage got picked up today, that's great, but we don't think about the background and all the hard work the legislators are doing.
Sure, exactly.
Very important. Tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your district.
Okay, about myself, I'm a lawyer in Albuquerque. I have my own law practice right now. And I've been on the city council for, I guess it's about 9 years now. 2005, I got elected. And I represent the area of the city, which is the far southeast corner of the city. It's south of Manal, east of Eubank. And it's the southeast corner, but Central Avenue actually kind of goes all the way to the southeast corner, right at the edge of the city there. So part of it is in the so-called Northeast Heights, like around the foothills around Eubank and Wantabo and south of Manal, all that area around Supper Rock, around the area around Lomas that goes up to the foothills. That is technically in the Northeast Heights, but it's really part of the southeast corner of the city. So there's this almost an exact square chunk of real estate, which is east of Eubank, south of Manal. It includes 4 hills. It includes this neighborhood, which is fairly new, called Volterra or Wantabo Hills. Also includes the neighborhoods of Willowwood and Mirabella and Mira Vista, the areas around Costco. Some old areas of the city, actually, around Gene Bellama, and those are areas that are in transition. There's some old schools in that area that we're working on, McCullum Elementary, for instance, and Apache and Acoma. So there's a lot of areas of the old Northeast Heights that were built shortly after World War II. There's some nicer areas around the foothills. We have 4 Hills, which is a unique neighborhood in and of itself, and then you have the foothills neighborhoods, and then you have the sort of old Northeast Heights neighborhood. So it's really a mix. Yeah,
a large mix of different demographics in all the areas in there. And do all of you had mentioned that there's 8 other folks that are doing the same thing that you're doing. Do you all get together frequently and be able to talk about what's going on, or are you primarily independent?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. There's something in New Mexico called the Open Meetings Act. And actually, if more than 4 of us ever get together and talk about city council business, it would be a crime. We're not allowed to do that. Yeah, we're not allowed to get together because anything that we do in terms of city council business has to be out in the open. You know, we can talk behind the scenes and try to line up votes sometimes to see if you can get support for things, but when you actually vote on stuff and you actually discuss things as a body, we have to be in the open. Usually, in fact, we have TV cameras running when we do that.
Outstanding. It's a good way to have business done anyway, isn't it?
Yep, exactly.
It is. I know that you have a very huge sense of family and the
Yeah.
things that you do, and it's driven you to fight for a lot of the families in your district, which has just been fantastic. You've had some new parks and community centers and all these different things that are making the area just so inviting to the people to be able to get involved. Now, I've heard about this one, and you're going to have to explain this to me a little bit. Can you tell us more about the regional pickleball facility and how they will and when they'll be built here in Albuquerque?
Well, you hope to get it built within the next 2 years.
Okay.
We're going to use bond money. We have an election every 2 years, and one of the things that people vote on when they vote in the municipal elections, and I hope people do vote in these municipal elections, especially in the off year, which is what's coming up. Every odd year, the presidential election and governor's elections are on even years. The municipal elections are on odd years. So school board, although they're at slightly different times, we have a school board election in February. We're going to have a municipal election in October, and there's not going to be a mayor candidate or any mayor candidates on the ballot. There's going to be city council candidates from the even numbered districts, and there's going to be a lot of bonds and other questions about charter amendments and things like that. But these bonds are very important because they enable the city to do things like build parks, like we talked about before, add on to the museum, we hope, and improve roads, things like that. Well, this facility that we're going to hopefully get in this bond question is going to enable people to come here for sports tourism. Now, pickleball, let's talk about what that is.
Yeah.
That's something, it's the fastest growing sport in the country, is a sport called pickleball. The reason why is it's built on a court which is the same size as a badminton court, although the net is the same height as a tennis court net. And you use little wooden paddles. I guess they're not rackets, they're called paddles, and the ball is a wiffle ball.
Oh, okay.
And what it does is it's very fast-paced and very competitive, but because it's on a small court, people don't have to move as much. So you get a really good workout without beating up your body.
Well, great for the older people as well, anybody,
Yeah.
but certainly for folks that are looking for something to do that are more mature.
Exactly, and that's why it's fast-growing, because as we know, that segment of our population is growing. People are living longer, and they're having a higher and better quality of life as they get older. So this sport is just perfect for them. And actually, there's these pickleball leagues and so forth, and they're looking for places to go and visit. And so it's like sports tourism, and these are people who have some disposable income, looking to travel.
Yeah.
And Albuquerque is so perfect because I can't take credit for this, but we have some of the best weather in the country.
Yeah, we'll take it though.
Yeah, the sun shines about 300 days a year, so we can have these tournaments here. And except like days like today, most days in Albuquerque you could actually play outside, except for January, February,
Yeah,
not
a
so
little
nice.
bit here and there.
Yeah, but for 9 months of the year we could have outdoor tournaments, and we could even have some other facilities that we could build indoors to maybe bridge that gap a little bit. But a regional facility where you have like 16, 20 courts would actually bring in a lot of people to Albuquerque, a lot of people who would have a little bit of money to spend here.
Sure.
And these are folks who just love to travel, and it'd be a good asset for our community to have that, as well as the people who are here. Because right now we have pickleball, and what they do is they take tennis courts and they kind of
Modify.
they modify them a little bit. And there are huge lines, because one of the places that they play is up at Eubank and Lomas, the Los Altos tennis courts up there. And sometimes they play at the Manzano Mesa Multi-Generational Center, and there's a waiting list for people to play. It's really big in Albuquerque already, and this would make it bigger and bring people in.
And I had no idea, I'd never heard the phrase before, but in preparation for our meeting today, I went online and started looking. It's everywhere. And,
Yeah.
I encourage the viewers, get online, take a look at it. This could be a whole lot of fun for the family.
Yep, it sure
To
is.
get out and do that. So it's tremendous. What are some of the priority initiatives that you have in mind right now within your district?
Well, some of the things about my district I've been working on the whole time I've been there, and they don't seem to be moving as fast as I'd like them to. In particular, it's the redevelopment of East Central. Central Avenue is the old Route 66. It's very historic. It's culturally significant in our community. And what happened, especially at East Central, but all along Central, is that I-40 got built, and it really dampened the vitality of the businesses on East Central. And we're really trying to bring that back. What happened, I got elected in 2005, then the Great Recession hit in 2007. And it's really hard to redevelop when the economy is recovering slowly. We are doing a good job. A lot of businesses have come in there.
Sure.
We have 2 shopping centers that are in transition. We're working on trying to bring those back. So East Central redevelopment is one of the great challenges that we have in District 9. And frankly, redevelopment of Central Avenue throughout the city is something that we're all working on.
And there's a lot of planning for that. I'm hoping that all comes to fruition quickly. You know?
I hope so, but the thing about planning and redevelopment is like pushing on a rope. It is really difficult. You need the market to be better than it is, and it's starting to improve. You need good zoning, good planning, good incentives,
sure.
and all that has to work together, and we're working hard to try to make it happen. Also, there's something which goes right through my district, which people don't know about in terms of a valuable resource and how valuable it is, which is the Tijeras Arroyo. The Tijeras Arroyo actually drains all the East Mountains, or most of the East Mountains around Albuquerque. When there's a huge rain, it carries almost as much water as the Rio Grande.
Wow.
But when it's not raining, of course, it doesn't carry much. East of Four Hills Road, there's actually a perennial running stream, and there's a little cottonwood bosque back in there, right in the city of Albuquerque, right on the edge of the city limits. And all in the bed of the Tijeras Arroyo, we have a patchwork of private and public ownership. We're trying to bring that all into the public domain and make that open space, get easements from the landowners so people could actually use that open space area as a resource for the city. Right now, it's kind of in limbo, and we're trying to bring it and protect the wildlife and bring
sure.
it back.
Wow, that's, you know, it's amazing the things. We live in such a beautiful area, and there's so much opportunity to be able to do such wonderful things, and we're very blessed to be here, honestly.
Yeah, we are.
What are some of the challenges that you foresee? We only have a couple minutes left, but what are some challenges that you see and how are we going to overcome those?
Well, the biggest challenge I see as a city councilor, because one of the most important things we do is every year we pass the budget. And the budget has to be passed usually by May 1. We'd like to see it. And because the beginning of the fiscal year is July 1, so by May we'd like to have the budget in place so that we know what's happening come July 1 in terms of the end of the fiscal year and the beginning of the new fiscal year. And I have to tell you, financially we're in a tough spot right now. We've been in a tough spot because our city government is funded primarily by gross receipts taxes, which is driven by the economy.
Right.
And then recently with the Justice Department and the consent decree that we've entered into, they're requiring the city of Albuquerque to spend another $5 or $6 million, which we need to do on training police officers and dealing with people with mental illness. That's a good thing. I mean, we can't, you know, there's nothing wrong with training police officers. It's the more training we give them, the better for our community. But it's expensive, and we're going to have to try to find the money to come up with that, as well as running the rest of the city. And in the city of Albuquerque, I mean, most of our, probably 70–80% of the cost of running the city are the people, the employees. And as you know, everyone knows our cost of health care go up every year.
Yes.
We try to give people some raises if we can, but they've been very, very minor. The employees have really worked with the community and have really gone without raises, most of them, or very small raises for a long time. We have a lot of vacancy savings, which means we don't hire people when the position becomes vacant, and that puts more pressure on the employees. So the city employees are working real hard. They're really doing their part. But the city keeps growing. The needs of the city and the people in the community keep growing, and the needs for the services of the city keep growing, but our budget has been relatively flat. So that's the real big challenge I see as a city councilor, as the appropriating body. It's going to be a tough couple months coming up.
You know, finances are always an issue no matter where we are.
Yep.
You know, it's something that we have to work on. Well, Don, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for all the hard work that you're doing for the city, and especially in your district. It's just wonderful to have you here. And who knows, maybe in the future we'll get together and knock a pickleball around. That would be all right.
That'd be awesome. Let's do it.
That would be awesome. For those of you joining us today, thank you for being part of Join Our Town. My name is Mike Cosgrove. Have a blessed day.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and made possible by your telephone dollars. Your continual support can keep Join Our Town brought to your home every day.